As the students fled, Omiladun's eyes blazed with fury. Her entire body trembled as her mermaid form shimmered in the fading light. A sudden thunderclap shook the skies outside, and the very walls of Jobele Girls and Boys Secondary School began to crack. The school gate shut itself, and no one, including the teachers and the students, could leave the school premises. Omiladun's voice rang out, loud and filled with anger. "You have no idea what you've done, Fisayo." Omiladun glared. Fear gripped Fisayo as she stared at Omiladun's transformed mermaid form. Trembling, she fell to her knees, begging, "Omiladun, please, I didn't mean it. I am so sorry." Omiladun's eyes glowed with anger, her voice sharp. "Shut up! It is too late for that," Omiladun said. She moved forward, her tail gliding across the water-soaked floor. "You tormented me for years, Fisayo. The bullying, the pain, the loneliness, it was unbearable. But exposing me like this is unforgivable," Omiladun yelled. Fisayo cried harder. "Please, don't hurt me. I will do anything you want, Omiladun." Fisayo cried. Omiladun's expression darkened. "No one can save you now." Desperate, Fisayo screamed, "Mom! Dad!" But no help came. Omiladun raised a glowing hand, placing it on Fisayo's head. "You will suffer for every tear you caused me," she yelled. A brilliant flash of light filled the room, and in an instant, both girls vanished. Silence fell, leaving behind only rippling water and a storm raging outside. Chaos erupted at Jobele Girls and Boys Secondary School as students fled through the now open gates, many not even sure why they were running. They were following the mass panic, unaware of the true cause, which was the shocking transformation of Omiladun into a mermaid. The heavy rain only added to the confusion, soaking everyone as they tried to escape. Teachers, equally unsettled, scrambled to calm the fleeing students, but their attempts were in vain. Mr. Adebanjo, the school's principal, was in disbelief as Mrs. Adumbi, the school counselor, briefed him on what had occurred. "A mermaid? That is ridiculous," he muttered, shaking his head. Yet, the fear spreading through the school told a different story. Hours later, as the rain subsided, the situation worsened when a swarm of reporters descended on the school grounds. Microphones and cameras were thrust toward the staff, demanding answers. "Principal Adebanjo, is it true that a student transformed into a mermaid?" a reporter asked sharply. Pushing forward, Mr. Adebanjo, trying to maintain authority, replied firmly, "There are no mermaids at this school. What likely happened is that a student wore a costume as part of a prank," Mr. Adebanjo said to the reporters. "But we've spoken to several students who swore they saw the transformation," another reporter countered, skepticism clear in their tone. Mr. Adebanjo took a deep breath, aware that he was losing control of the narrative. "Kids' imaginations can run wild. This was clearly a misunderstanding. I strongly urge you not to spread false stories," Mr. Adebanjo said. The reporters pressed further. "Where is Omiladun now? If it was just a prank like you said, why hasn't she or her family spoken?" Mr. Adebanjo shifted uncomfortably. "I am certain she's at home with her parents, avoiding the media attention," he said firmly. One journalist wasn't convinced. "But you haven't spoken to her parents directly, have you?" The principal hesitated. "Not yet, but I am in contact with them. Everything is fine," he added. As the questions continued, the principal grew frustrated. "This is a misunderstanding. Mermaids are not real, and no supernatural event took place here today." Despite his firm words, the media frenzy escalated. That afternoon, Bankole left his workplace earlier than usual. His wife, Biodun, had been battling a nasty bout of malaria and was resting at home. He had just finished serving her a hot bowl of pepper soup, hoping it would help soothe her symptoms, when he decided to switch on the television. As the news broadcast filled the room, his heart sank. A newscaster on the television announced, "Breaking news, a student turns into a mermaid at Jobele Girls and Boys Secondary School." Biodun, who had been lying on the couch, immediately sat up, her face pale from illness, twisted in shock and fear. "Omiladun," she whispered, her voice trembling. Tears welled up in her eyes, her hands shaking. As she clutched at the fabric of her clothes, It must be Omiladun, her daughter, she cried. Bankole's mind raced, and he could barely hear the rest of the news over the pounding in his chest. Without a second thought, he grabbed his car keys. We need to go, now, he said. Biodun, forgetting all about her illness, hurriedly pulled on a jacket and followed her husband to the car. Her heart raced and tears streamed down her face. What if something terrible has happened to her? What if they hurt her? She sobbed, barely able to contain her fear. Bankole's hands shook as he turned the ignition, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. We will find her, he said, though his own voice was thick with uncertainty. We have to find her. As they sped toward Omiladun's school, Biodun fumbled with her phone, trying to call the principal. That was when she saw it. 6 missed calls from the principal. Bankole, the principal already called us 6 times, she cried, her voice strained with panic. Then why hasn't he told us where she is? Bankole snapped, his fear manifesting as frustration. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the steering wheel, accelerating to a dangerous speed. Call him now, he said. Biodun quickly dialed the principal's number, but the line was busy. It's not connecting, she said, her voice rising in hysteria. Why isn't he picking up? She cried. Keep trying, Bankole muttered, his foot pressing harder on the gas pedal. His thoughts spiraled out of control. Every second they wasted could mean their daughter was in more danger. The guilt gnawed at him. How could he have allowed this to happen? He had failed to protect his only child. This and more were the thoughts of Bankole. When they finally arrived at the school, the atmosphere was chaotic. Reporters swarmed outside and students still lottered around, whispering nervously about what had happened. Bankole and Biodun burst into the principal's office, their hearts pounding in unison. Where is Omiladun? Biodun demanded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Where is our daughter? Principal Adebanjo, looking equally flustered, stood up from his desk. I assumed Omiladun had already gone home. I tried to call you. Home? Bankole interrupted, his voice dangerously low. We are here because she's not at home. How could you let this happen? My daughter was in your care, he angrily said. The principal's face paled. Please, Mr. Bankole, I am doing everything I can. We will find her. Find her? Biodun's voice cracked, her emotions overflowing. She's out there, alone, exposed. And you are telling us you don't even know where she is? Before the principal could respond, the door burst open again. Fisayo's parents stormed in, their faces contorted with anger. Where is Fisayo? Her father shouted, his booming voice filling the room. We can't find her anywhere. You were supposed to be in charge of these children, he charged. The principal's eyes darted between the two sets of parents, his composure crumbling. I thought Fisayo had left with the others. Well, she didn't, Fisayo's mother snapped, her eyes flashing with fury. As the principal mentioned Fisayo and Omiladun were the 2 missing students, Fisayo's mom turned suddenly towards Bankole and Biodun, her finger pointed accusingly. It is your daughter. We were told Fisayo was in the classroom with that witch daughter of yours, and now both of them are missing. Biodun recalled, stunned by the accusation. What did you just call my daughter? She yelled. You heard me, Fisayo's mother growled, stepping closer. Your daughter turned into a mermaid. We were told Fisayo poured water on her, and her voice broke off, trembling with anger and fear. She turned into some kind of monster, she added. Bankole's fists clenched at his sides. Watch your mouth, he warned. How dare you accuse my daughter when you just confirmed your child is a big bully? Who poured water on my daughter? Fisayo's father joined in, his voice sharp. Whatever your daughter is, she's the reason our Fisayo is missing. Where is she? Where did she take our daughter? Take your daughter? Biodun retorted, her voice shaking with anger. We have heard from some of their classmates that your daughter has tormented mine for months, and now you are trying to blame Omiladun for this? Biodun screamed. The tension in the room reached a boiling point. Without warning, Fisayo's mother reached into her handbag and pulled out a small bottle of water. With a sharp, angry movement, she opened it and threw the water all over Biodun. Let us see if you are a marine spirit too, Fisayo's mother shouted, her eyes wild with accusation. Biodun, stunned for a moment, wiped the water from her face, her expression darkening. Then, with a quick and fierce motion, she slapped Fisayo's mother across the face. The sound echoed in the small office. Does that answer your question? Like mother, like daughter. You are just a bully, like your stupid daughter. Biodun hissed, her voice dripping with rage. All hell broke loose. Fisayo's mother longed at Biodun, and soon both women were grappling with each other, shouting and hurling accusations. Their husbands, equally enraged, squared off, shouting insults as the principal frantically tried to break up the escalating fight. "Stop it, all of you!" Principal Adebanjo shouted, throwing himself between the two families. "This isn't helping anyone," he said to them. The principal managed to separate the two families just as the school security rushed in, followed by two uniformed police officers. The officer turned to Principal Adebanjo. "We have received reports of a disturbance involving two missing students. We will be investigating immediately," the police officer said. The principal nodded, grateful for the interruption. "Yes, officers, please help us find these girls before things get any worse." As the police began their investigation at the school, Bankole suddenly grabbed Biodun's arm, pulling her aside to a quiet corner. His eyes were wide with realization. "Biodun," he whispered urgently, "I think I know where Omiladun might be." Biodun's heart leaped in her chest. "What? Where? Tell me." Bankole took a deep breath, his voice lowering. "Remember what the river goddess told us when Omiladun was born? She warned us that if her true form is exposed, she might seek refuge in the water. She can live on both land and in the river." Bankole revealed. Biodun gasped, her eyes widening in shock. "The river goddess, we need to speak to her now." She clutched at her husband's arm, her voice rising in panic. "We have to find the custodian of the river. He's the only one who can help us reach her." Without any word, they raced to their car. As they sped off, the panic and desperation weighing heavily on them, Biodun's voice cracked. "Please, God, let her be there. Let her be safe." Bankole pressed harder on the accelerator, his mind racing. There was no time to waste. On the other hand, the world blurred as Omiladun and Fisayo the bully disappeared from the classroom. When they reappeared, the bright, calming blues of the sea surrounded them. Omiladun gasped as her body adjusted to the water, her tail shimmering under the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the ocean. Her mind was flooded with memories long buried, the life she once knew as a mermaid, the home she had been forced to leave behind. "It is all coming back," Omiladun whispered, her voice filled with awe. Her heart swelled with a sense of belonging. The ocean, this was where she truly belonged. All the memories she had in the river as a mermaid before she became human, which were suppressed by her human brain, now flowed freely like the currents of the sea. As Omiladun swam deeper, a figure emerged from the depths. The river goddess, a marine mother, appeared with outstretched arms. Her face glowed with pride and joy, her flowing hair cascading like waves. "My daughter, you have returned," the river goddess said, her voice echoing through the waters. "Mother," Omiladun replied, her heart leaping with recognition. She swam into her mother's embrace, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. For the first time in years, the weight of the human world, the bullying, the pain, lifted from her shoulders. The river goddess held her tightly. "I knew the time would come when you would return to us, although I wish it were under better circumstances. The world above was never meant for you, Omiladun. Welcome home," the river goddess said. Meanwhile, Fisayo the bully, still in her human form, watched helplessly, her eyes wide with terror as she watched the mermaids surround them. Her chest heaved as she tried to comprehend the impossible scene that was before her. These were actual mermaids, their tails shimmering with iridescent beauty, swimming gracefully through the water. "This cannot be real," Fisayo whimpered, trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, Omiladun, let me go," she begged. The river goddess glanced at Fisayo, her expression hardening. "You have tormented my daughter for too long," she said, her voice stern. "Now, it is time for you to face the consequences." "Please," Fisayo begged, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't know." "Silence," the river goddess commanded. She turned to a man nearby, his powerful form cutting through the water with ease. "Take her to the prison," the river goddess commanded. The man nodded and swam swiftly toward Fisayo, grabbing her roughly by the arm. She screamed, struggling in his grasp, but it was no use. He dragged her toward a large cage made of coral and seaweed, which lay deep within the seafloor. Inside, crabs, octopuses, and various other sea creatures scuttled around, their pincers and tentacles written menacingly. "No, please, no!" Fisayo the bully cried. As the man tossed her into the cage, the creatures immediately swarmed her, their slimy bodies crawling over her skin. Fisayo's scream echoed through the water as she felt the weight of the octopuses sticking to her, their tentacles squeezing her limbs. "Help me! Someone, please!" she screamed, but her cries went unheard. Omiladun watched the scene unfold, her heart filled with a strange sense of justice. This was the torment that Fisayo had inflicted upon her, the helplessness and pain. Now, Fisayo was tasting her own medicine. The river goddess floated beside Omiladun, her gaze softening. "What will you do about the other bullies, especially their ringleaders?" the river goddess asked Omiladun. Omiladun's eyes flashed with determination. "I will bring Bola and Demilade here soon, mother. They deserve to join Fisayo. They will face the consequences for all they've ever done to me." The river goddess nodded approvingly. "Good. But now, let us celebrate your return, my child. It has been far too long." A celebration erupted under the sea as mermaids and mermen gathered, their tails flashing with vibrant colors. The sea creatures hummed with joy, and the ocean seemed to sing as the river goddess smiled with pride, watching her daughter take her place among them once more. Omiladun swam with grace and freedom, her heart light. She felt whole again, far away from the torment and bullying that she had endured on the land. Here, she was at peace. She swam alongside other mermaids, their tails glowing in unison, creating a dazzling display of shimmering colors that lit up the ocean. For the first time in what felt like eternity, Omiladun was free from the cruelty of the world above, free to be who she truly was, a daughter of the sea. Jobele Boys and Girls Secondary School had been eerily quiet since the day of the incident. The gates were locked, and the once lively campus now felt abandoned, with only the occasional presence of police officers gathering evidence and interviewing staff. In the midst of all the confusion, Bola and Demilade sat huddled together in Bola's home, discussing the events that had transpired. "I can't believe this is happening," Demilade muttered, her voice shaky. "Fisayo is gone and the school is closed. What if Omiladun comes for us too?" Demilade trembled. Bola leaned back, her arms crossed, trying to maintain a facade of confidence. "Don't worry, I don't think Omiladun will bother with us. Fisayo was the real target." Demilade looked at Bola, her eyes wide with fear. "But we were all part of it. What if she knows we are responsible too?" Bola shook her head, though doubt flickered in her eyes. "We got lucky. We escaped when everything happened. Fisayo is the one paying the price. She's the sacrificial lamb. Trust me, Omiladun's revenge ends with Fisayo." Bola said confidently. Demilade wasn't so sure. The guilt of what they had done, how they had tormented Omiladun, gnawed at her insides. "I regret everything," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt her like that." Bola sighed and reached over, placing her hand on Demilade's shoulder. "It is too late for regrets. What is done is done," Bola said to Demilade. With that, the two girls bid each other goodbye. But that night, Demilade tossed and turned in her bed, unable to shake the unsettling feeling that had settled deep in her bones. As she drifted off into a restless sleep, the room grew unnaturally cold. Suddenly, she jolted awake, her heart pounding in her chest. In the dim light of her room, she saw something that made her blood run cold. It was Omiladun. But this was not the same Omiladun from school. This Omiladun stood before her in full mermaid form, a shimmering tail glowing softly in the darkness. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and her presence was both beautiful and terrifying. Demilade screamed, her voice piercing the night air, but Omiladun remained unfazed. "You can scream all you want, Demilade," Omiladun said, her voice cold and calm. "Your parents won't hear you. No one will." Tears spilled down Demilade's cheeks as she scrambled back on her bed, pressing herself against the headboard. "Please, please don't hurt me. I didn't mean to bully you. I was just following Fisayo. I didn't want to." "Spare me your excuses," Omiladun interrupted, her expression hard. She swam gracefully toward Demilade, her tail shimmering in the moonlight. "You chose to join Fisayo. You enjoyed watching me suffer. And now you will pay the price." Demilade sobbed, shaking her head violently. "No, no, I am sorry. I would do anything. Please let me go." Omiladun leaned forward, her face inches from Demilade's face. "It is too late for that," she murmured. With a swift motion, Omiladun raised her hand and touched Demilade's forehead. The room spun around them, and in the blink of an eye, they vanished. Demilade gasped as she found herself submerged in the cold dark waters of the sea. Her heart raced as she looked around, terrified and disoriented. Her worst fears had come true. She was under the sea, surrounded by mermaids, and there was no escape. She was also thrown in a cage, and to her horror, she spotted a familiar face in a nearby cage. It was Fisayo's face. "Fisayo," Demilade whispered, her voice barely audible as the weight of the water pressed down on her. Fisayo looked up, her eyes hollow and defeated. Her once vibrant spirit had been crushed by the torment she had endured. "Demilade," she croaked, her voice hoarse from crying. "You are here too." Demilade's heart sank. What are they going to do to us?" Fisayo shook her head slowly, her expression grim. "There is no way out. These creatures, they never stop." Before Demilade could ask what she meant, she felt something crawling on her skin. She looked down in horror to see crabs, octopuses, and other sea creatures beginning to swim over her, their slimy bodies sticking to her skin, their pincers digging into her flesh. "No, no, please!" Demilade screamed, thrashing as the creatures clung to her. The sensation of their cold, wet bodies crawling over her was unbearable. Fisayo watched in silence, her eyes filled with despair. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. "We will never escape this." Demilade's screams filled the water as the creatures continued to torment her, their sharp pincers and tentacles wrapping around her limbs. She cried out for mercy, but none came. The cold, dark sea was now a prison, and the torment that awaited her was endless. The next morning began like any other for Demilade's mother. She knocked on her daughter's bedroom door, expecting a usual sleepy grumble in response. But when there was no answer, she entered the room only to find the bed empty, her brow furrowed in confusion as she glanced around. "Demilade, are you in the bathroom?" she called. When there was no response, she began to worry. After a thorough search of the house turned up nothing, she rushed to her husband. "Demilade is not in her room. I can't find her anywhere," Demilade's mom cried. Demilade's father, who was in the middle of reading the morning paper, waved it off. "She's probably at Bola's house. You know how close they are. There's no reason to worry." But as the hours dragged on, with no sign of Demilade, her mother's worry turned into panic. "This isn't like her. She didn't even tell us she was going anywhere. Something is wrong." Finally, they decided to drive over to Bola's house. When they knocked on the door, Bola's parents greeted them with warm smiles. But as soon as Demilade's mother asked, "Is Demilade here?" the smiles faded. "No, We haven't seen her. She didn't come by. Bola's mother replied, concerned. Demilade's parents exchanged nervous glances. She has been missing all morning, her father explained, his voice tight. We thought she might have come here. Bola's mother shook her head. No, she hasn't. Should we help you look for her? The two families spent the next few hours searching around the neighborhood, but when there was still no sign of Demilade, her parents made the difficult decision to call the police and the school principal. I am afraid this isn't the school's responsibility, the principal said firmly when they explained the situation. Demilade didn't go missing at the school like Fisayo and Omiladun. I am sorry, this is a matter for the police, the principal said. Disappointed by the principal's lack of help, Demilade's parents returned home, their worry turning to dread. Back at Bola's house, the news of Demilade's disappearance had hit Bola hard. Her mind raced with fear and guilt, and before long, she broke down, crying uncontrollably in front of her parents. Bola, calm down, her mother said, trying to comfort her. We will find Demilade. She will be okay. But Bola shook her head violently, her sobs intensifying. No, you don't understand. She won't be found. I will be next. Omiladun is going to come for me. Her parents exchanged confused looks. What are you talking about? Her father asked sternly. Why would Omiladun come for you? Bola buried her face in her hands, ashamed and terrified. It's all because of us, me, Fisayo and Demilade. We bullied Omiladun every day. We were so cruel to her, and now she's punishing us. Her mother gasped, her eyes wide with shock. You? A bully? How could you do such a thing, Bola? We raised you better than this. Bola's father, his face red with anger, struggled to keep his voice steady. We taught you the way of the Lord. How could you turn into a bully? I am sorry. Bola sobbed. I didn't mean to. It was Fisayo's idea. I just went along with it, but now Demilade is gone, and I know Omiladun is going to come for me too. Her father stood up, his expression resolute. Enough of this. We need to take you to our pastor immediately. You need deliverance before anything else happens. Her mother nodded in agreement, wiping her own tears. Yes, we need to pray for you, Bola. We will ask God for forgiveness and protection. Within minutes, they were in the car, speeding toward their church. Bola sat in the back seat, still trembling with fear, while her parents prayed aloud for her safety. As they drove along the quiet road, something strange began to happen. The air grew cold, and a thick mist began to form around them. Bola's mother looked out the window, confused. Where did this fog come from? She asked. Suddenly, out of the mist, two beautiful figures appeared. Mermaids, their tails shimmering in the daylight, their long hair flowing around them like waves. They floated above the road, their radiant beauty both mesmerizing and terrifying. Bola's father slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. What in God's name is this? He glared. Bola's mother gasped in horror. In the back seat, Bola stared at the mermaids in stunned silence. Her heart stopped as she realized what was about to happen. No, please, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Before her parents could react, Bola's body began to shimmer. In an instant, she vanished from the back seat, leaving only an empty space where she had been moments before. Bola! Her mother screamed, turning around to find the back seat empty. Where is she? Where is my daughter? The mermaids in front of the car disappeared just as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving Bola's parents in a state of shock and disbelief. Bola is gone, her father whispered, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. She vanished. Her mother clutched her chest, her heart pounding as she cried out in anguish. Our daughter is gone. Bola, disoriented and terrified, found herself submerged in the dark waters of the sea. Her heart raced as she realized where she was. She had been taken just like Demilade and Fisayo. Fear gripped her as she looked around, her vision blurry from the water. In the distance, she saw them, Demilade and Fisayo, both imprisoned in coral cages. The sea creatures swarmed around them, their eyes filled with hopelessness. Bola, Demilade called out weakly, her voice strained. You are here too. Fisayo, looking exhausted and defeated, shook her head. There is no escape, Bola. This is our punishment. Bola's heart raced as she stumbled forward, but before she could reach them, a swarm of sea creatures crawled over her, their tentacles and pincers digging into her skin. The sensation of their slimy bodies sent a wave of panic through her. No, no, please! Bola screamed, thrashing against the creatures, but it was no use. She was trapped. At the end, Bola fainted. After days of traveling by road and sea, Biodun and Bankole finally reached their destination, an old weathered hut on the edge of the river bank. It was Baba Ado's home, the custodian of the sacred river that had granted them the gift of Omiladun years ago. Exhausted from their journey, their faces bore the weight of worry and despair. But as soon as Baba Ado opened the door, he recognized them immediately. Ha! The parents of Omiladun, Baba Ado said, his voice warm but tinged with concern. What brings you here after so many years? He asked. Biodun and Bankole exchanged glances before Biodun spoke, her voice cracking with emotion. Her daughter, her true form has been exposed. She's missing now, Baba Ado. We believe she has returned to the sea. The old man's face grew serious. It was bound to happen, he murmured, nodding slowly. Omiladun has returned to her origins. The sea has reclaimed her, he added. Bankole stepped forward, desperation in his voice. Please, Baba Ado, we beg you, help us find her and bring her back. We can't lose her, Bankole said. Baba Ado sighed deeply, the weight of the request heavy on his frail shoulders. It will be difficult. The river goddess does not take kindly to those who break their promises. You were warned to protect Omiladun's secrets, Baba Ado said. We tried, Baba. We truly did. But it wasn't our fault. Please help us. Baba Ado stared at the heartbroken parents for a long moment before finally nodding. Wipe your tears. We will try something, he assured them. Baba Ado instructed them to gather a dozen of every fruit that they could find at the markets. Without hesitation, Biodun and Bankole set off, gathering the fruits that Baba Ado requested. Upon their return, Baba Ado led them to the edge of the river. Baba Ado stood at the water's edge, the fruits laid before him in neat piles. He began chanting, his voice low and rhythmic, calling out to the river goddess with eulogizing incantations. The wind seemed to pick up, and the water began to ripple unnaturally. Suddenly, the river parted, and the goddess emerged from the depths, her form majestic and terrifying. Her eyes blazed with anger as they fell upon Biodun and Bankole. You dare to come to me now? The river goddess said, her voice echoing across the water. You promised to keep Omiladun safe, yet you allowed a secret to be exposed. The goddess yelled. Biodun fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Please, we beg you, it wasn't our intention. We love our daughter, and we did everything we could to protect her. The goddess's face remained cold. Your failure has forced Omiladun to return to her true home. You were not worthy of the gift I gave you. The river goddess screamed. Baba Ado stepped forward, his tone pleading. Great goddess, these parents have suffered much. They seek only to reunite with their daughter. I ask you to please show mercy. But the river goddess was unmoved. No! They have proven unworthy. Omiladun belongs to the sea, where she will be safe. The water goddess insisted. Biodun's sobs filled the air as she cried out, I miss her so much. Please, let us have her back. Without a word, the river goddess turned back into the water, leaving only silence in her wake. Baba Ado turned to Omiladun's parents, his face solemn. "I am afraid there is nothing more we can do," he said to them. Omiladun, deep beneath the surface of the sea, had heard everything. Her heart ached for her earthly parents. Despite the power she had reclaimed as a mermaid, the love she had for her human family remained strong. She swam to the river goddess, her face filled with determination. "Please, mother," Omiladun said softly, "they don't deserve this. My earthly parents have always been kind to me. They tried their best to keep my secrets. It's not their fault." The river goddess glanced at her daughter, her expression softening slightly. "They failed you, Omiladun. How can you defend them?" the goddess asked. "They are good people," Omiladun replied firmly. "They have shown me nothing but love. It wasn't their fault that my identity was exposed. Please, allow me to return to them. I don't want them to suffer anymore," Omiladun pleaded. The river goddess hesitated, her gaze fixed on Omiladun's earnest face. After a long silence, she sighed. Back at the riverbank, Biodun and Bankole wept bitterly, their hopes dashed by the goddess's rejection. Baba Ado stood quietly by their side, unable to offer any more comfort. But just as they were about to leave, a familiar figure emerged from the water. "Omiladun!" Biodun gasped, her heart leaping in her chest. Omiladun stood at the edge of the river, her tail shimmering before it transformed back into legs. Biodun and Bankole rushed toward her, their arms opened wide. But before they could embrace her, the river goddess appeared once more. "Do not forget, humans," the goddess said sternly. "It is because of Omiladun's love for you that I am allowing her to return. Do not fail her again." The river goddess murmured. Biodun and Bankole nodded gratefully, their tears now of joy. "Thank you, goddess," they said in unison. "We will never fail her again." Omiladun, her legs restored, ran into her parents' arms. They hugged her tightly, their relief overwhelming. "We missed you so much," Bankole whispered, kissing her forehead. Baba Ado, watching from a distance, smiled at the family's reunion. "What a bond you share," he said. As they prepared to leave, the river goddess turned to Omiladun. "Before you go, what shall be done with the ones who bullied you? Fisayo, Demilade, and Bola?" Omiladun, now wiser and more in control of her powers, summoned a hourglass from the air. The sand within began to fall slowly. "I have set a 20 years timer. When the last grain of sand falls, they will be free to return home," Omiladun answered as she placed the hourglass at the riverbank. The river goddess nodded in approval. 20 years, a fair punishment. The river goddess agreed. With a final wave to the marine goddess, Omiladun and her parents left the riverbank, the bond between them stronger than ever. Upon returning home, Omiladun faced questioning from the police and a group of eager journalists. "Where have you been all this time?" one officer asked. Omiladun smiled warmly. "I got lost in the bushes when everyone ran away from school. I have been wandering around ever since." One reporter, skeptical, asked directly, "Are you a mermaid, Omiladun? Some of your classmates claim to have seen you transform." Omiladun shook her head. "It was a prank. I was wearing a mermaid costume to scare them," Omiladun answered. Another journalist leaned forward, holding a bottle of water. "Let us put that to test. May I?" Omiladun's parents began to protest, but Omiladun reassured them. "It is okay. Go ahead. Pour the water." The journalist went ahead and poured the water on Omiladun's legs and even sprinkled some on her face, but nothing happened. Her parents stared in astonishment as the journalist finally seemed satisfied and left. Once alone, Biodun turned to her daughter. "How did you manage to hide the transformation?" Omiladun smiled. "I learned a few tricks while I was under the sea," Omiladun said confidently. 20 years passed, and back at the river, The final grains of sand in the hourglass fell. Fisayo, Demilade, and Bola were thrown from the river onto the banks, their legs wobbling beneath them. They staggered home, broken and defeated, as the sea creatures that had tormented them for so long finally let them go. As for Omiladun and her parents, who had long since moved to Canada, they never looked back and they lived happily ever after. So, dearest listener, be careful and watchful, because Omiladun or someone like Omiladun might be your neighbor, friend, or lover. If you enjoyed this story,